The lesson beyond the classroom. Mrs. Evelyn Carter was a teacher like no other. With her graying hair pulled into a bun and glasses perched on the tip of her nose, she had been teaching at Rosewood High School for over 30 years. Though strict in her demeanor, she had a heart brimming with compassion. Her students, however, often mistook her firmness for coldness. Among her students that year was Liam, a restless 16-year-old boy with a penchant for trouble. He was smart, too smart, some said, but he lacked focus and direction. His father worked long hours, and his mother had passed away when he was young. This left Liam to navigate life largely on his own, which often led to mischief and missed opportunities. A rocky start. It was a warm September afternoon when Liam first walked into Mrs. Carter's English class. He slouched in his seat at the back of the room, his arms crossed and his expression defiant. Mrs. Carter observed him quietly, sensing the storm within the boy. "Good afternoon, class," she began, her voice calm but commanding. "This year, we will explore not only literature, but also ourselves. Through stories, we will discover who we are and who we can become." Liam scoffed, drawing the attention of his classmates. Mrs. Carter paused, her sharp eyes locking onto him. "Mr. Callahan," she said, her tone steady, "you seem eager to share your thoughts. Would you like to start by telling us what you expect to learn this year?" Caught off guard, Liam muttered, "Nothing much," eliciting a few chuckles from the class. Mrs. Carter didn't flinch. "Then perhaps this will be the year you surprise yourself." The turning point. Weeks passed, and Liam continued to challenge Mrs. Carter, submitting half-finished assignments and disrupting class discussions. But she never lost her composure. Instead, she pushed him harder, assigning him books that spoke to struggles and triumphs. To Kill a Mockingbird, Of Mice and Men, and The Catcher in the Rye. One day, she handed him a personal journal. "Write something every day, even if it's just a sentence," she instructed. "Your thoughts matter more than you realize." Reluctantly, Liam began scribbling in the journal. At first, it was filled with complaints about school and life, but over time, his entries grew deeper, revealing a longing for connection and understanding. One Friday, Mrs. Carter asked the students to write an essay on a moment that shaped their lives. Liam groaned but complied. When he submitted his essay, Mrs. Carter read it in her quiet office late that evening. As she read, her eyes filled with tears. Liam had written about the day his mother died and how it left him feeling invisible. "It's like I'm a shadow," he wrote. "People see through me, but no one really sees me." A conversation that changed everything. The following Monday, Mrs. Carter asked Liam to stay after class. He assumed he was in trouble again, but her tone was gentle. "Liam," she began, holding up his essay, "this is extraordinary. It's raw, honest, and powerful. Thank you for sharing it." Liam shrugged, uncomfortable with the praise. "It's just stuff I wrote. Doesn't matter." "But it does matter," she insisted. "Your words have meaning, and so do you. I see you, Liam, even if you feel like no one else does." Her words struck a chord. For the first time, Liam felt truly heard. From that day on, he began to change, not dramatically, but subtly. He started participating in class, asking questions, and putting effort into his assignments. Mrs. Carter continued to encourage him, offering guidance and challenging him to reach his potential. The real lesson. One cold winter afternoon, Mrs. Carter introduced the class to poetry. Most students groaned, but Liam was intrigued. She shared poems by Robert Frost, Maya Angelou, and Langston Hughes, encouraging the students to write their own. Liam surprised everyone when he shared a poem titled "The Shadow's Voice." It was a poignant reflection on his feelings of invisibility and his journey to finding his voice. The class fell silent as he read, and for the first time, Liam saw respect in their eyes. After class, Mrs. Carter pulled him aside. "You have a gift, Liam," she said. "Never underestimate the power of your voice. It can change lives, including your own." The journey forward. As the year progressed, Liam blossomed under Mrs. Carter's mentorship. He began submitting his poems to local competitions and even won a few. His confidence grew, and he started helping other students who struggled with their own work. On the last day of school, Liam stayed behind to thank Mrs. Carter. "You didn't give up on me," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "Why?" Mrs. Carter smiled. "Because every student is like a story, Liam. Some are easy to read, while others take time and patience to understand. But every story has value. and yours is one of the most meaningful I've ever read. A Legacy of Hope. Years later, Liam returned to Rosewood High School, not as a student, but as a guest speaker. Now a successful author and motivational speaker, he stood in the same classroom where he had once sat at the back, defiant and lost. As he spoke to the students, he shared his journey and the impact Mrs. Carter had on his life. "She didn't just teach me English," he said. "She taught me to believe in myself, to find my voice, and to use it." Mrs. Carter, now retired, sat in the audience, her eyes brimming with pride. She had always believed in the power of words to transform lives, and Liam was living proof. From that day on, the story of Mrs. Carter and Liam Callahan became a cherished tale at Rosewood High.